Hello everybody, Yuno here, and it is now officially November. I'm back from my vacation, and during my vacation I saw Terrifier 3 in theaters, and thought this would be a perfect opportunity to give an honest review on it. But before we begin, I'd like to say that this review is going to be as spoiler-free as I can possibly make it. If you haven't watched the movie already, I'd like you to be able to watch this video to decide whether or not it's for you, though I do highly recommend checking out the movie itself. And if you enjoy the content you see here today, it'd be awesome if you could leave a like and check out my other content. Without further ado, onto the video. Terrifier 3 is the long-awaited third installment to the Terrifier franchise, first starting as an indie film, then getting to a second much bigger budget movie for release in theaters. And now years later, the third one. The movie is a slasher in nature, centering around Art the Clown as he goes on a massacre, with some paranormal shenanigans. Now I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the film, spoiler-free, and my opinion on it, as well as ranking it by the following criteria. Overall, I think Damien Leone's Terrifier 3 was a fine addition to the series, albeit a bit too reliant on the previous entry. However, I do feel like it was quite overhyped, not to say it wasn't a good movie, more so that all of the articles claimed people were leaving the theaters nauseous had me somewhat excited for what this film had to offer, but after watching it myself it felt a little too same-ish after the previous two entries. Now don't get me wrong, there were some genuinely shocking moments I wasn't expecting, but then it's counteracted by stuff I wish happened on screen rather than off screen. The movie in general feels a bit confused by where they want to take the franchise, but leaves it open-ended for the fourth and supposed final installment. For a scare factor, I give this movie a 6 out of 10. After watching the first two, you kind of know what to expect. This movie can be very story-reliant, and what it does do, scary it does well, but it's definitely heavy into the slasher genre at this point. Art the Clown is just as great as ever, always such a wonderful performance, going from hilarious and comedic to menacing and terrifying at the drop of a dime. I do, however, have mixed feelings about Art the Clown's paranormal cohort in this movie that I will touch on later in the video. As far as this movie goes, it can be suspenseful, but at this point you know what to expect, so it's hard for this movie to scare you. For shock value, I give Terrifier 3 an 8 out of 10. This movie has some really shocking moments just like previous installments in the series. As for Art the Clown's cohort in this movie, I wasn't quite expecting the host it chose, but it made sense in terms of the events of the previous centuries. More on that later. In specific, one part that really shocked me was his scene with Art the Clown becoming a mall Santa, and yeah, antics ensue. I wasn't quite expecting it to take the direction it took. Some of the twists in this movie were quite well executed as well, though I do have my gripes with some of them, but I'll get on that later. For atmosphere, I give this movie a 5 out of 10. It had some really tense and atmospheric moments, which if I told you would kind of spoil it. However, this movie weirdly enough kind of struggles to maintain a balance in its atmosphere in my opinion. Sometimes it just feels too campy, kind of damaging the scare factor a bit and making it feel like a cheap slasher rather than a full-fledged horror movie. But then other moments it's really creepy and does its atmosphere super well. I just feel like it struggles to find a good balance between the two. For the kills, I give this movie a 7 out of 10. It's just as gruesome and gory as previous entries. However, I feel like some of the kills are too samey or just rehashes of old kills. Don't get me wrong, there are some new and really creative ones, but they aren't really lingered on enough or shown at all. Which is another gripe I do have with this movie. It sounds weird, but I wish they would have shown us more. And I understand it's hard to keep being creative with the kills in a genre like this. However, Terrifier has always been a franchise focused on its gruesome, realistic, and creative executions. For story, I give it a 6 out of 10. It's good, don't get me wrong, and leaves itself open as an anthology for a fourth installment. However, going from the first to second movie, I loved the switch up in story and cast, and it made it feel so fresh, and allowed you to get further invested in the characters knowing you only had a short amount of time with them. Terrifier 3 heavily relies on the story from Terrifier 2, however, and if you haven't seen it, this movie won't stand alone very well at all. I was already invested in these characters in the second movie and was ready to get invested and get to know new ones. However, it hurts the who's gonna die next factor when you kind of get the impression that these characters are gonna make it through this movie as well. For example, in the first movie, you think you know who the protagonist is, but as the cast slowly gets whittled down and through changes in events, your expectations get subverted, and I would have loved to see that in this movie. As for Art the Clown's cohort, I feel like her talking so much and being on a revenge quest kind of defeats the purpose of the character in Art the Clown. The appeal of Art is you never know what he is thinking, he never speaks a word, and his facial expressions and actions carried a plot and story in the previous two movies. However, I feel like he's been pushed back a bit to set aside room for this paranormal entity guiding his immortality, which I feel robs his character a bit and hurts the movie overall. I also wish this movie would have shown us more. As I've been saying, there are specific plot twists that come out of nowhere due to them not showing enough, which I won't spoil, but they kind of get you going, really? Overall, it was a good story, I just had a few personal gripes with it, which they might not affect you at all. It was just something that after seeing the first two movies, kind of, I don't know, let me down a little bit. Overall though, I give Terrifier 3 a 7 out of 10. It's a solid follow-up to the amazing Terrifier 2, and while it has its problems, I do see the direction they're taking for the next movie, and I'm excited to see it whenever that comes out. But with that all out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed the video. This is Yuno, and if you liked the video, it would be awesome if you left a like down below, and hey, maybe even subscribe. If you watched this movie already or plan on watching it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to check out my other content, right here would probably be a good place to start. With that out of the way, have a wonderful day.